without trying to butter you up, since you've already asked me to speak and I've already benefited from the previous panels, I would like to thank you for this event, for bringing together such a rich debate and voices from across the region, because ever since the war started, for us, the media, it's been so difficult to stop and ask questions outside of the day-to-day news. So today has truly been very welcome. I have been asked to talk about the media perspective in covering the war and the refugee crisis, in working with civil organizations. Of course, I can't pretend to speak on behalf of all my colleagues, but here are some things that some ideas that I can share with you. As Angela said, I've reported from Ukraine both during the Maidan and after, and I've worked a lot with the civil society in Ukraine and throughout the region. So when this version of the war started, I was lucky enough to have a network of contacts among Ukrainian journalists, experts, NGOs in both Ukraine and Romania, to help me better explain the war to our readers at Panorama, to accurately explain the human tragedy and the refugee crisis. And some of those experts are attending this panel, and I would like to extend my sincere thanks to them. I am truly aware that our reporting would have been much more difficult and poorer these past few months without your help. And I am also pleased to have seen here throughout the panels today people I met years ago in Kyiv, and I just wish we could reconnect in happier circumstances, but it is what it is. On the other hand, on the issue of communication and supporting the media coverage, I can't really say I have had the same level of, shall we say, satisfactory communication with the Romanian authorities, especially in the first weeks of the war. I found it easier to get information and context from the Ukrainian side than from the, Romanian Ministry of Foreign Affairs, for example, and that has been quite interesting for me to notice. Even though I haven't been able to go to Ukraine and do on-the-ground reporting right now since February, I have also been in frequent contact with journalists who are doing this and are doing excellent work there. And I have always been very grateful for their insights, just in terms of giving me a more nuanced background. And on my end, I have been in constant contact with fellow journalists from other countries, journalists who, for example, were going to Ukraine, and I could help with contacts, or foreign journalists coming to Romania to report on like the neighboring region to this war and the refugee crisis. Another thing that has been of significant focus for me and for my colleagues at Panorama has been our fact-checking efforts and debunking of Russian propaganda, both in Romania and elsewhere, regarding the war, NATO, the European Union, and so on. Again, it helped that I used to do this a lot ever since the war in the East, so it wasn't something that I started doing this year, and so my journalistic muscles, shall we say, could easily go into high gear since February, and they've been there ever since. On this topic, I would say that there is another aspect that I have been thinking about frequently, and can't really say that I have an answer, but would be interested in hearing your thoughts on this. At times, the fact-checking or debunking effort has also looked at celebratory pronouncements about Ukraine or the West. And because it's easier in Romania to debunk Russian statements, because we're not quite a Russophile country, I have occasionally noticed a pushback when I try to be, how I saw it, realistic regarding Ukraine. For example, several speakers mentioned before the candidate status. So when people were celebrating on social media that quote unquote Ukraine will join the EU, I wrote at that point about how far that perspective is and how difficult the road ahead is, because I thought it was important to just balance the topic. and give it context. But I've noticed that not everyone welcomes this kind of approach in times where we tend to see things in black and white with a lot of emotional undertones. And some view it as raining on Ukraine's parade at times, which I can understand. There is a huge public support for the Ukrainian cause, which creates a pushback in the face of, let's say, negative news regarding Ukraine. But I would say that it's tricky for journalists to operate within this framework. And I do wonder how to better navigate this in order to have a balanced approach in this information war, because Russia is not the only one with propaganda effort in this war, let's be honest. And if we fail to hold on to the trust of the public, that will be detrimental to NATO, to Ukraine's fight against the Russian propaganda machine. And I know that it only takes one viral slip on our part to give Russia fuel for weeks. So I'm quite mindful about that. And it's something that I've noticed also in talking to civil society, both in Romania and in other countries in the region, that there's also sometimes a pushback from them to only see this like with a single dimension, and everything is this way and that way. So maybe we could talk about that. And let me end with this, because I would rather take questions should you have some, although I imagine my colleagues in this panel have more valuable insights than I do as a journalist. I would say this: I know you are sometimes frustrated with the barely scratching the surface approach that you sometimes see in the media on these very complex and consequential topics. But I would kindly ask you to maybe consider that some of us don't know how to find people like you outside of events like this. And the pandemic has also stalled our networking and has truly had an impact on our coverage. So maybe consider pushing us more often, just saying, hey, I saw you guys ran this story. Maybe for future reference, you should take this into account. You should talk to XYZ because I know they've done great work on this. And here's how you can reach that person, or any kind of insight in that sense. I promise you that nobody would take offense in that, or I hope nobody would take offense in that. And on the contrary, we would be grateful, and the public would benefit from it. And as you know, civil society cooperation with the media sometimes needs a push. Oftentimes it needs a shove. And these are times that require a shove. And on my end, I will make sure to give you my email in the chat section, and please feel free to reach out whenever you think you have something to say, whenever you know of something important that should be reported on, and so on. So thank you, and I look forward to the rest of the panel and to your questions.